Hi everyone. The more observant among you might have noticed that I've handed out a piece of paper, a template, in the break. So before we begin, if everyone could just grab a template and a pen, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you about 10 to 20 seconds to draw something when I give you a word. And all I ask is that you don't think about it too much, don't spend too much time, don't worry about the art direction, don't worry about what it's for, just draw. Okay, is everyone ready? Okay, draw a leader. Leader, please. I'll give you maybe about 10 seconds more, so you know, any final flourishes or arrows or signatures or anything. Just so everyone knows, Seamus has pretty much drawn himself.
That's exactly what I did.
Okay. If everyone's ready? Okay, so in this quick exercise, in this room, what do you guys all think a leader is? How many people drew someone in a uniform? Couple. Thanks, Jorge. How many people drew someone with facial hair?
Yes.
Okay. People with facial hair, mainly. How many people drew a military figure or a political figure? Have you read my thesis? How many people drew a man or a masculine figure? Okay. I'm going to call that pretty much a majority, but to be honest, I was expecting the results to maybe be slightly different because everyone spent a long time studying leadership. But this exercise, I actually ran it on around about 100 people so far, from 6-year-olds to 65-year-olds, different nationalities, genders, and the results, bar a little random Bart Simpson and a few conceptual drawings. Largely, the majority drew a male with a uniform or with facial hair, one of those three things. So this kind of presents a bit of a problem for me. Obviously, I'm studying to become a leader, but I'm not male. I don't wear a uniform. In fact, my dress sense changes out the wind. And I don't have facial hair, thanks for asking. So as a female and a creative, actually it's worth pointing out that if you ask someone to draw a creative, I wonder if it would be the same sort of result. But as a female, is it going to be harder for me to achieve leadership and try and get to be a leader when everyone's inbuilt idea is that? But it's not just about me, it's actually about industry. And while all these results were coming back and a lot of people were drawing men, the real problem is that half the planet is men. And in industry, women influence 85% of customer purchases, but actually it's males that make up 75% of the ads. And in terms of creative departments, at the minute, say I'm in a creative department of about 13 and I'm the only female, and that hadn't really ever got to me or hadn't really ever occurred to me before. But in terms of a business problem, what we really need is balance. In terms of how we get there, in terms of this thesis, I really wanted to go back to the real kind of the fundamentals of leadership. Why do people want to be what they draw on that paper? Why do some people become it? And why do some people not reach leadership? So to try and find out why and how, I've kind of went a bit off-piste with the methodology. I collected over 90 of these doodles, and I'm going to clear up this room afterwards, thanks. Ran an online survey just to get general ideas about risk-taking, attitude, and general progression through leadership. I also ran some one-to-one interviews, email interviews, and some desk research. And some of the people that I talked to, I tried to get a bit of a cross-section of people that I see as leaders. So you'll notice my dad's in there, my original idea of a leader, but also my boss, my mentor, some people within my own industry, some people outside of it. But to be truly authentic to a real cross-section of my life, I had to go a little bit outside of that and try and bring in some animals somewhere. Some apparently quite obsessed. So because I wanted to look outside of the boardrooms and outside of the classrooms, it was about more than one or two little things, and it was about more than a process. It's actually about some fundamentals of leadership as I see them. And those three fundamentals are pretty huge, really broad. But I thought as a starting point, they pretty much encompass everything that you might ever need to emerge as a leader. So in terms of physiology, it can really define whether you lead or not in terms of, we've got cavemen to thank in terms of a preference for taller, healthier, stronger looking males. And I don't know whether that's ever going to go away, but these three things, physiology, attitude, and environment, they're all completely interlinked. So your physiology can dictate which environment you end up in for a career. Your environment can dictate your attitude, short-term and long-term. So my thesis, as I finally arrived to it, these three fundamentals explain why and guide how leaders emerge. But within each fundamental, there's fixed elements and variable elements. And what I mean by that is fixed elements in terms of our physiology, they would be the things that we can't change easily. Our blood type, our gender, our height, for example. And in terms of variables, the opportunities in terms of what we can tweak and the things we can work with in order to help ourselves emerge in certain situations. And similar in attitude and environment, there are certain challenges and certain opportunities. So physiology, when I first got into this, I just assumed that physiology, it was set and you couldn't tweak it at all, and what you're born as is, you can increase your IQ and you can learn obviously, but in terms of who you physically are, it was pretty much set. But after a couple of conversations with the guys that I work with a couple of neuroscientists, and I discovered the idea of genetics and epigenetics. So genetics are the fixed things about yourself that aren't going to go away without any major operations, or they're there to stay. And the variable layer above that are the epigenetics, and what I mean by that are the hormones and the little things that you can tweak. I mean, some of this has a little bit of overlap with what Patricia was talking about. One such hormone is oxytocin, which is also known as the trust molecule. And in terms of helping us emerge in, thank you. In terms of helping us emerge in a certain environment, if you trigger oxytocin, it actually increases serotonin levels and increases dopamine, it lowers cortisol, so you actually become more in tune with the environment around you and with the people around you. So if you can boost this in yourself and in others in a team, obviously it's going to go some way into helping that team around you, or helping facilitate success in the team around you, for example. And it's available in a hug, because in terms of oxytocin's created in touch, and when you trust someone, your body creates it, and in turn it creates another feeling of trust, so it's cyclical. But on a more, back onto the leadership, a leadership level, we can actually tweak our testosterone and cortisol, and there's a TED talk by Amy Cuddy who describes this. Kind of feeling like I should have done it now before I came out, but if you stand for 2 minutes in a power pose, so like a Usain Bolt or a Bruce Forsyth or whoever you deem powerful, it actually ups your level of testosterone, and if you stand in a less powerful pose, it decreases it. So you can essentially fake being a leader in the short term. And it actually works. It led to people gambling more, but it actually, in terms of the animal kingdom, obviously if an alpha male or alpha female is beaten in a fight or dies, then the second in command, within a few days, their testosterone levels rise in order to be able to cope with the challenge. And I think in terms of leadership roles, you know, it says something about if we put ourselves forward for more challenges, then our physiology is here to back us up. So the verdict on physiology, work with what you've got and tweak the rest, literally fake it till you make it. In terms of attitude, the process of emerging, and I've had to really simplify the idea of what a leader is. So it's really linear in this instance, but it's always emerging from one state to another state, and that state in many cases is from the known to the unknown. And when I first started, I was convinced leadership was all about taking risks, because every time I've ever progressed in terms of leadership, it's been when I've taken what I deem to be a risk. But talking to people in an online survey and one-to-ones, I quickly realised, you know, it's common sense. You know, risk it can be quite a big part, but it's not everything. It comes in handy, but you know, it's not the be-all and end-all of leadership. In terms of looking to different areas of society on attitudes to risk, I was going to add a video here, but I thought better of it. But I quite liked just the way that this video summarised the attitude towards risk and creativity, and that some people actually thrive on risk and need it in order to feel like they're achieving something. And particularly in creativity, it's often where some of the best ideas emerge. So a quick summary on attitudes, from the known to the unknown. The verdict would just be say, fuck it. Just say fuck it a bit more often, and you know, put yourself in a position where you feel uncomfortable. Look at the things that you're facing that are fixed and see them in a different way, and if they are fixed, just if there's any way to overcome them, just do it. Just put yourself out there, because your physiology will support you, and if you take those risks. And at the end of the day, bad decisions, they make great stories, and we're in an industry of storytelling. So in terms of environment, the fixed and variable, in advertising in general, it's predominantly been a male-dominated environment in terms of the way the businesses have been set up, the way that creativity is judged in terms of the male humour that's dominated creativity in advertising over the years. And while that is changing, the variable is actually going to be what happens next. So in terms of the environment that's out there at the minute, and the fact that so many people draw men in leaders, as leaders, how are we going to try and change that unconscious status quo, and how will this be less of a rare thing in generations and generations to come? Because actually at the minute, the only people that tend to draw women, or in fact draw not men, or something conceptual, they're the women that are actually involved in the process. So while they can be quite aspirational, we're kind of preaching to the converted a bit. Like, most of the successful men drew successful men, and most of the successful women drew successful women. And as for the rest of people interviewed, there are quite a lot of influential factors, and one dominant one was obviously parents and guardians, closely followed by TV and cinema. And I think in terms of parental influence, even if someone's parents aren't around, obviously that still has an impact on how they develop and how their idea of a leader develops. There's a study by Cox and Cooper about the makings of a British CEO, and actually what comes out is that early responsibility is one of the main drivers in people emerging successfully as a leader. So in our environments, how do we get that early responsibility? And how do we know we're going to do it right? Well, gone back to monkeys again, Japanese macaques, in fact, who have a very rigid class society and a very rigid hierarchy, but all the youngsters, all the inexperienced, they learn from the most experienced. So they're getting a chance to sample expertise at a very young age, and almost learn vertically instead of among their peers. And what if we could use that in industry for not just women, but for all high potentials? In terms of the skills that we've got, in the environments that we've got, it's, again, for women, we have to reframe the value that we have in terms of the skills that are almost becoming a prerequisite for leadership, sort of empathy and an ability to connect. And in terms of high potentials in general, we basically just have to show people what we've got, and potentially instead of having secondments laterally across networks and experience in a different country, could we get a secondment that goes vertically and experience leadership before we're a leader, and perhaps learn that way? So a quick summary. In terms of physiology, we can fake it. We can be whatever we feel like we're missing until we actually become it. In terms of attitude, we need to learn just to say fuck it more often. And you notice I've changed to FKK, because I actually found out this week that FKK is a nudist. There's a naturalist link in Germany, so I'm sorry about anyone who's German. I only found that in the back translation from my summary, so sorry. And in terms of the environment, we need to just put ourselves out there, and we know that our physiology can help us, and with the attitude to put ourselves in those challenges, then we're in a position to shape the environment around us. This is a a great quote from someone that she's like a legend in my eyes at McCann. And again, this is for women particularly, but I'm going to go on to not just women. And it's that there are a lot of myths and paradigms out in the workplace that tell us how we should behave as women, but it's bollocks, because this is a new world and the same rules don't apply and we can rewrite them. So in terms of the challenges and the opportunities, we can make the future, make the environment what we want to. And in terms of everyone, not just women, this idea of analysing the fixed and variables in what's around you, in yourself, in your attitude, in your physiology, or in your environment, there's some value in that in terms of self-awareness. And self-awareness is deemed, it's one of the most sought after attributes in terms of leadership, that idea of introspection and knowing what you can do next, because you never know what you can achieve until you know where you are. And if you know what's fixed about yourself and you take a chance on the variables, at the end of the day, everything that's come before is fixed and our future is variable. So take a chance. Okay, thanks.